Well, good evening, everybody. It's Roger Casale here from New Europeans and Europe Future Fringe. And if you've been with Hey EU, Tax CO2, this marathon event from the beginning, congratulations on making it to the end of the day. This is the wind down phase. This is where we go into storytelling mode, and we have a wonderful group of people to share that moment with us this evening, who will introduce themselves in just a second. But just before I do that, let me thank Virginia Fiume, coordinator of Humans and Humans, for this invitation and for all the work that's gone into today. And Virginia just told me what a success it's been. We're going to see Virginia again at the end of this session to wind up. But what a powerful day it's been, and how powerful it is when people come together around a common cause, a common issue, across borders, across organizations. And we can feel that energy, that positive energy, and we're absolutely happy to be a part of it. So thank you very much. And thank you to all the people who are watching and who've been signing the European Citizens Initiative for carbon pricing to be introduced. Thank you for doing that and for sharing it. Thank you for doing that today. And thank you for what I know you're going to do tomorrow, which is to share around even more. And because we've got to get to that level of 1 million signatures. And today has been a great boost to that. But now it's time to step back, to wind down a little bit and think about how stories can help us to really connect with this issue. And we know that time is running out, time is running down. Not all of us in the developed world understand that the levee is about to break. Maybe it has broken. Maybe we have reached a point of no return. It doesn't necessarily touch our lives in the same way as it does others, but it's touched our lives in some way, and it's touched the lives of all of the people who are going to speak to us tonight. So welcome, relax, enjoy this conversation, the stories that we're going to tell you tonight. Hopefully that will inspire you, and it may be also fire up your imagination, and so that you can tell us your stories too. So first, I'd like to introduce Stanislas Demeestere. And Stan, good evening. Tell us who you are and where you're located.
Yeah, there we go. Hi, I'm Stan. I'm currently at the Belgian coast. I am the Vice President of the European Future Forum, where we try to engage citizens and engage civil society to sort of take up their role. Aside from that, I also studied climate change law, so I'm very much working with the with the issue, and spoke earlier about the carbon tax and the role of CSO in pushing for a carbon tax. So I'm excited to tell a little story.
Thank you, Stan. And we've also got Elisa Mereghetti, a filmmaker, with us. Elisa, hello. Tell us where you're located and a little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, I am located in Bologna, and I am a documentarist. I work for television and for various subjects, and I've dealt a lot with environmental issues in my work as a documentarist. So I have many stories to tell. I will tell you one.
Thank you. Welcome. And delighted that we have the Rev Marie-Elsa Bragg on the call too. Hi, Marie-Elsa. Where are you located? Good evening. Thank you for being with us. Tell us about yourself. We need...
Oh, can you hear me now?
That's absolutely great. So, hi.
So, thanks for having me.
Oh, we can hear you. Yeah.
Good. So I'm in London, and I am a priest and a writer, and I'm really interested in all this issue about the philosophy and theology and creative angle of all of this. Really, that's what I'm working with. I've written some novels which have a lot about it, and I'm really interested to be with everybody tonight.
Great to have you with us, and for everyone listening, you're going to have the feeling that we should have just had our panel on one at a time for a session by themselves, and that feeling is going to be reinforced now when I introduce, ask Suzana to introduce herself. Suzana Carp. Good evening, Suzana. Where are you located, and please tell us something about yourself.
Good evening, all, and what a day it's been, a proper marathon. So really, thumbs up for everyone who's made it through, and I hope some of the passion and some of the good ideas that have been discussed today will inspire those who are joining us online. My name is Suzana. Roger has introduced me. I'm currently based in Brussels, where I work on climate change policy, but I'm originally from Romania. And this evening, I'll share with you the story of how I came across the issue of climate change when I was 17, and what exactly has made me choose to also make this my career, which is what I'm currently working on.
Thank you very much indeed. You're very, very welcome. So we're going to have a round of stories. And as I was getting ready for this event this evening, the master storyteller, Bob Dylan, and he has a song called The Levee's Gonna Break. I don't know whether you know it, but there are two lines in that song where he says, if it keeps on raining, the levee's gonna break. Some people still sleeping, some people are wide awake. Well, we're wide awake, and you may be about to go to sleep, but we will wake you up, and we need to wake you up because the levee's about to break. Change is happening, and it's dangerous, and it may be irreversible, and we need to wake up and understand that and do something. So, but often it's through literature and poetry and words and stories that we can connect with that, not just with our heads, but also with our hearts. So I'm really looking forward to, curious to hear the stories that our panelists are going to start to tell us this evening. And we're going to start with Stan. So over to you, Stan.
Hi. Yeah. So when Roger called me yesterday to bring a story, I assumed straight away that I had a lot of stories. I studied climate change law, and I just assumed that I had a lot of things to say. And then I got stuck on trying to find something. I started studying climate change law in 2018, and coming out of that summer, there was a huge drought in Belgium. There was forest fires in California, over autumn and winter, there was storms everywhere. Then there was the fires in Brazil, the fires in Australia. There was a lot happening. And meanwhile, I was engaged with a bunch of very environmentally engaged and active students, much more active than I am, and very knowledgeable on the topics. And so, of course, you create this sort of echo chamber where everyone talks about climate change and you see the direct effects. And I was convinced that within a year there would be some sort of a crisis UN or EU summit where they would discuss all these things happening, because I just thought it was so in your face that, of course, something would happen. Nothing happened. And, the summer after that, there was actually, again, huge drought in Europe. And the reaction of the EU, one of the reactions of the EU was to loosen environmental regulations for farmers because they were struck by droughts and they needed their direct payments. So rather than just paying out, the EU said, well, we'll just loosen environmental regulations, which is baffling to me. But it kind of made me realize that I'm not really a victim of climate change today. I'm a witness of climate change today. And the fact that that is already something else than a normal citizen in 2020 is crazy. I can read a newspaper without, exception every single day. There are articles in that newspaper that deal with climate change or the environmental crisis. Every week it's on the cover of the newspaper without ever mentioning the C word. And it kind of makes me realize that climate change is a complex issue and you need a certain amount of knowledge about it, and education is important. But the fact that I am different than a lot of citizens makes me a witness. I can see the link between climate change and the economy, and hunger, migration, development, women's rights, pandemics. But today, I'm not the victim. I'm not the protagonist in a climate change story. For probably the next 10 years, I'm not going to be the protagonist in a climate change story. I'm a white middle-class man in one of the richest countries in Europe. But the real victims are, citizens of Tuvalu, whose country is literally sinking, or a farmer in East Africa that's dealing with a locust plague, or a village in Brazil that's gone up to flames, or the city of Yakutsk in Siberia that is, due to the melting of the permafrost, literally just disappearing into the soil. I found it very difficult to figure out my own story in that. And the only thing I can do right now is elevate other people's stories. And for that, I created an organization called APID, where we want to help environmentally vulnerable communities and tell their stories. Because I think for me right now, that's the only story in which I can be a protagonist today is to help elevate other people. And that's how I deal with climate change today. I'm very lucky in that. And but of course, I'm very interested in hearing other people's stories. I'm afraid you muted, Roger.
Thank you, Stan, very much indeed for your story and for that tip. But thank you for your story, and let's just take a moment or two to reflect on what you've said to us. And I think it's very beautiful. So our next storyteller is Elisa, and over to you, Elisa. I think your mic's on. Yeah.
Yeah, should be on now. Is it? Okay. Okay. So yeah, the challenge is to speak about global warming from a personal perspective, or to experience how we experience it in a way. And of course, besides my own experience of living in Bologna, which is one of the hottest cities in Italy, and my apartment is probably the hottest apartment in the whole city. And this is, connecting to what Stan was saying, could be our experience of global warming on our own skin. We do feel it. I do feel the summers getting hotter and hotter every year. But of course, in my experience as a documentarist, I might have more interesting stories to tell that refer to, for example, the theme of desertification that we have addressed in various ways. And you know that desertification is the loss of productive soil due to overexploitation and to global warming also. So we've seen that happen in many different places, including southern Italy and including, for example, Burkina Faso, where the farmers were were counteracting with the desertification by building small stone walls, and it seemed like a titanic effort. And I'm wondering how these farmers are doing now that temperatures in that area, in the Sahel, are rising and rising and rising. They're supposed to rise 3 or 4 degrees in the next 10, 20 years. So it is really happening very, very badly for them. So this is what I think when I think of global warming. I think of all these people that I've met, and one person in particular that I wanted to tell you about is this woman here. I don't know whether you can see her. Is a woman from the Sahel, is a woman from the Peul people of northern Senegal. Her name is Altine, which means Monday. And we've met her for a film that we've done there about 20 years ago. And it was all about her daily life. And they go to gather water at a well where all the villages are around this well. And it's a well that goes fishing for water at 200 meters below the surface. It's fossil water, which means it's not renewable. So all these people are living there. They're forced to live there. They live a sedentary life, but they were nomad before. So it's a hot place. Their resources are getting lower and lower. The productive soil is getting shrinking. The rainy season is in fact getting shorter and shorter. So I think of this woman who is told us that she liked millet as a main food, and that was in fact all she was eating, big millet and small millet. So I think of Altine, of her children, of her going to get the water to the well and using very, very little water to wash her face from a teapot, just like a few drops. And I've learned so much about the responsible use of resources from these people who have very little access to water, and how they manage, how they handle it. So this is what comes to mind when I think of this, and the feeling of this person when I think about maybe going back there 20 years later. It's a feeling of worry. I am worried for her. I think that they are the people who are experiencing the effects of global warming on their very life, their very existence. They're struggling for survival, and there is conflict happening in these areas, and a lot of these conflicts is due to climate change, which affects the people, the political situation, and it has very, very strong effects on their lives. And I feel a sense of being trapped, and I don't know how they are going to make it. And it makes me think how different is their perception probably of this issue and our perception. And I think it's an interesting thing to discuss maybe later on. That's it.
Thank you, Elisa, so much for bringing Antoinette and her family and her story into this room and sharing that with us and your feelings about it and what's happening. And perhaps we just need a second or two just to reflect on the impact of what you've said to us. Thank you. And so I'm going to turn now to the Rev Marie-Elsa Bragg to tell us her story. Marie-Elsa, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
That's very moving. I think there's a lot to be said about the different perspectives. Both Stan and they talking about the ability to see this from different perspectives and how important that compassion and connectivity, human to human between different cultures, is at the moment. I've taken the idea of story straight as the idea of story. And I was thinking, as I was getting ready for this, how important and how powerful our vision is of nature, how we hold just the idea of nature. Because every vision we have is actually a guiding force to what will happen in the future, to where we'll go. And if visions are taken care of really well, they're layered and they're full of a strong philosophy, religious or not religious, hopefully all joining together to say the same kind of thing. But visions are what changes, they change the world. And we lose the creativity that goes into these visions at our peril. George Orwell talks a lot about this void. And if you see his book, Animal Farm, it's a really good example of all the artists and all the creativity being taken over in a sluggish way, in a way that hasn't really been applied to what the meanings are, to galvanize people. And the real artists, he was really talking about what's happening in Russia, the real artists actually having to kowtow to people and visions that they didn't really believe in. So that I guess what I'm saying is a plea to all creativity. Don't underestimate your painting, your writing, your storytelling. These are the things that also not just fill the void, but they They create the vision that galvanizes the hearts, that makes the future that we're looking for. My story today is a very simple one, really. It's the idea of a children's book. Certainly for me, I was brought up with Enid Blyton's Magic Fairway Tree, which is where a little girl would escape at night and go in to visit Mr. Moon, who lived at the top of the tree, and other creatures who lived in the woods. But I also loved another book that was a book of fairies, where you had all the names of these beautiful flowers, and they would have a fairy keeper who would be dressed with a little hat, with all the petals as a hat. They were proper real fairy, and I totally believed in them when I was a child. And a storybook that you would tuck your son or daughter or niece or nephew or grandchildren into bed with is the story that I want to bring to your imagination. A story where a little girl or a little boy would get up in the morning before the adults were up, because the adults had probably forgotten how to see these beautiful beings or how to talk to the owl. They would get up in the morning just before dawn and go out into the garden or into the park or into the woods and meet the creatures. And they would have time and adventures with each one and learn about them. And then the dawn would rise with all its colours. And either that child who you're reading the book with will see the sun rise and see it nurturing and bringing everything to life and bringing the beginning of a new day, that incredible gift of a new chance, and bringing everything to light. Or when the sun rises, that child will see a terror that is burning down its life, burning down the forests, polluting the woods, making the air so full of smoke they wouldn't be able to breathe. Let's beware that we don't lose the vision of a healthy, beautiful nature, because that's the only guiding force that's going to get us and future generations through this, to understand how to live in a completely different way. That's my story for you. The hope that we can still read a children's book, and when the sun and the heat of the sun comes into a forest fire, their little imaginations will see the love and the nurture of a new day, not the desecration of a world and danger.
Thank you so much, Marie-Elsa. And if only we could see the world through the eyes of a child, we wouldn't want the owls or the fairies or the fireflies, for that matter, to go away. Suzana, your story at the end of the day. I'm just going slowly to let Marie-Elsa's words and images that she has brought forth in this conversation sink in a little bit deeper. But just give me a moment or two, and then we turn now to you and to your story. Thank you, Marie-Elsa. Thank you very much, Suzana.
Thank you from my side as well, and I think I found myself in that story quite a bit in terms of how I still try to look at the world and the vision I try to uphold. I should say that I was probably one of the few lucky youngsters to have studied climate change in high school. So I had won a scholarship and found myself in an international high school in New Mexico. Which was located in the mountainous desert. And I should say that for the whole 2 years that I was there was a drought, and we were going from one state of emergency with regards to water supplies to another. This was just unfolding in the background, and it had gotten to the point where we were making jokes to say, we must save the water, we must shower with our friends. And obviously that's not really going to help with the climate change, but just that it was already a big part of our everyday life consciousness, and that we were developing together. And I do remember in my environmental systems class, when sort of the science behind climate change was explained to us, we all had a moment of panic after the class, and we said, wait a moment, this whole thing is happening exponentially. You mean, so everything we put out continues to then break more and more and more and more ozone. So it's not just, one molecule of CO2 then destroys one molecule of ozone, but rather it constantly does it. So just the fear of that it's effectively not able to escape the atmosphere was, I remember, quite daunting, and for me and for my colleagues. And so when now with the Youth for Climate movement, and I see the same sort of desperation in the teenagers taking on the streets, and just a year ago there was the famous social movement around the UN Secretary General Summit with an estimate of 6 million people taking on the streets and led by a young person with the same sort of fear. So I perfectly resonated with that. I think I won't develop the story much more, but I will say that later on in university, I spent time studying areas of conflict. I was interested in conflict reconciliation, and there again, I encountered climate change as a factor that amplifies conflict. So I didn't know I would eventually work on climate change. It's just I encountered it again in my future studies. And after university, I went on to studying migration studies, and again, I became quite interested in the literature looking into environmentally driven migration. And I was utterly shocked to hear that there was nothing in the international law system that protected those that were forced to move because they had lost their homes to different weather events, unfortunate weather events. And so it's really, I took a long trip through different other topics to really finally decide later on. So in the second part of my 20s, that it all goes back to climate change at this point in time. That unless we actually do our very best in the next couple of years, with this timeline constantly shrinking on us, that it's not going to be very easy to then speak of peace, reconciliation, or of trying to adjust the international law system to deal with the different forms of migration. I think we're going to be constantly in crisis mode otherwise. And so I'm massively motivated to contribute and to be part of this movement. And coming back to the topic of today, carbon pricing, well, it does have a massive role to play. It has a massive role to play even in the redistribution of some of the profits that so far have been taken away, so to say, from, let's say, nature by virtue of not pricing pollution. And so in that sense, carbon pricing does have a possibility of generating revenues precisely to assist everyone, in fact, because there's those who are in dire need of assistance, but effectively we're all going to be needing massive support to rethink and to have net zero emissions lifestyles. So starting from maybe kindergarten to like a whole life frame taking place maybe in a landscape without many emissions. So anyways, thank you so much, and that was a bit my story. Glad to share many other ones in the future. I hope there will be an opportunity to connect again.
It's a wonderful story. Thank you very much indeed. And again, just take a moment to reflect on what you've said to us. And I think it, if I may, it brings us very, very well towards the end of this session. I hope we can still have a little bit of a chat between ourselves before it's time to wind up. But it's extraordinary how your journey, Suzana, has led you through so many different ways to this point of dedicating your professional life, but also much of what you do as a campaigner to trying to stop global warming. And I know that you are a great expert and one of the key people who've made such a difference in relation to carbon pricing. But tonight you've shown us how you really feel about that and where those feelings have come from. And I think for me that was certainly very, very powerful. Thank you. So we have just a couple of minutes really before I need to wind up and then give the floor to Virginia Fumey, the coordinator of Humans, who we thank again for the opportunity to support the campaign in this way. And I just wonder, Stan, you've perhaps we go round the table again in the same order. If you just share your reactions very briefly with us. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, so that should give a chance for everybody to share your reactions or say anything else that you'd like to say before we move to the close. So, Stan, over to you.
Yeah, the benefit of speaking first is that I got to listen to all these wonderful stories without having to think of what I was about to say myself, and I thoroughly enjoyed them, the diversity of them, and yeah, I'm still thinking about all of them, especially Marie-Elsa's childhood story, which I don't even know, but it's very interesting. I think what Suzana said last about discovering these various aspects of conflict resolution and climate change, and that's also something that I really realized is and that I think that should be highlighted more. It's really this almost like an awakening you can have once you're informed a little bit about how the complexities of climate change work out, is that you can look at reports of droughts in the Lake Chad bed, and then see how that links to economic instability, social instability, and eventually to conflict. And same for the Syria civil war back in 2011, where some aspects of, I think the UN calls it a conflict multiplier, is the term the UN uses. So it's definitely interesting how you can, if I were to talk to politicians and they would have a different priority, and they would, for example, say, look at the US, for example, where I'm sure politicians would say, yes, climate change is very important, but the Middle East is also very important, then only someone who knows and can read between the lines and is informed can see the link between those two things. And I think that is very much a priority, and that is something that, if I can say, we as storytellers should focus on, and through stories really get people engaged and get people link the different aspects of the crisis we're in, the crises that we're in, maybe. I think storytelling has a very, very important role to play, and also the hopeful side, as Marie-Elsa mentioned, of course. I tend to be a bit of a pessimist, but yeah, I definitely believe in the power of storytelling, and for today's purposes, again, is a perfect way to end this discussion. Carbon taxing is something highly specific, highly technical even, but eventually you need to know the story behind it, which is we need to tackle this issue the most effective way possible, and in that take everyone with us and leave no one behind. And I think that's a way you can really connect with people and reach out to the broad base you would need to activate a policy of this caliber.
Great, thank you. I said we would feel that we were just getting going, just as it's time to stop. But the good news is to continue a little bit longer, because the audience is building up on the Facebook live stream. Thank you very much to everyone who is watching us, and I've had a message from Virginia and the organisers to please keep going a little bit longer, because people are enjoying it so much. So we haven't got a lot of extra time, but we've got a little bit of extra time. So Elisa, would you like to share your response?
Yeah, sure. Just very briefly, I was interested in the fact that the narratives were combining, of course, everybody is underlining the power of stories, and that is certainly very, very important. And the power of imagination and the power of images also. And I'm interested in discussing this a little bit more in future occasions, how to bring together the political action, the civil action, and all of that with that aspect of imagination and connection in terms of emotional connection as well, and also spiritual connection. I think it's very important that we sort of try to bring this all together and not think in compartmentalized ways.
Thank you so much.
That's Marie-Elsa.
It's been really, really moving to be with you all and hear the stories, especially such personal stories. And then even a photograph of someone who's not your personal story, but you show a photograph of her. It's very moving to be around that energy of having so many people who've answered the call. I think the only thing I have to say is this. I think the majority of people are essentially really good. And the majority of people really, really want to help, but they don't know how. And it feels so complicated. And it feels so corrupt. And a vast majority of the people who are colluding with corruption are only doing that because they have at some point in their lives felt they have no other choice or nothing that's more important that would fill themselves or feed their families or help them survive. So if we can find ways to make this knowledge understandable for people, we can explain things in different forms, with film, with your philosophy, with your understanding of politics, these different forms. If we can be more clear and help people see how they can move forward, then I'm sure we can galvanize more hearts and minds into this cause. The question is not whether people want to. I think it is that many people just don't know how to begin.
Thank you. Suzana, what do we need to do? How can we help in the crusade to stop climate change? What are your reflections on this evening?
I think, first of all, you've helped me tremendously, because I think one perhaps negative aspect of working in this field is that you do see very often not just politicians, but politicians especially promising one thing or saying one thing, and then they go and vote against the very amendment that they supported, which would, help implement the Paris Agreement. Or so you're very often disappointed. And I have to say that for the past 5 years, I could certainly feel my own sort of heart hardening in this debate. And I think just the stories that I've heard tonight, and that they've really helped me sort of reach that point of the point of softness, of trusting that the world actually has so much of a good vision as well. That I think, at least for me, you've helped me tremendously. So perhaps I would say that we should maybe keep sharing these stories, maybe the human side of the climate change aspect, just to make sure we don't allow our hearts to harden too much. I think once we're all in that place where we can connect through our humanity, our shared human experience, and our care for future generations, I think then we can maybe indeed cope with the situation better. But obviously the second thing is we should all sign the petition, the European Citizens Initiative, because again, that's quite a nice way of connecting with other European citizens in other parts of this continent, which as it stands is the one that's best placed to lead us out of the current predicament. It won't be able to do it alone, but again, through the power of storytelling, it might well be that Europe will not be will not be doing it alone, because storytelling does allow us to connect across cultures. And when it comes to climate change, we do need quite a lot of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all my guests. And as I said at the start, and quoting Bob Dylan, if it keeps on raining, the levee's going to break. We might say if we keep pouring carbon into the environment, we're going to destroy the environment. And but we can make it stop raining. Imagine if you're standing in front of that levee about to break, with it raining and raining and raining. It doesn't have to be like that. Each of us can do something to help stop the pressure building up. And before we close, at the second line, some people are wide awake and other people are sleeping, and we have to wake people up. The time is running out. It's an emergency. But we need to stop global warming. We need to do it now. We need carbon pricing and other measures to do that. But today has been about carbon pricing and a huge mobilization, and we have to keep going because it's still raining. The carbon is still pouring into the environment, and we're probably close, if not beyond, the tipping point. But let's stop that happening. Let's stop global warming. Let's sign the petition and do what we can to get the carbon pricing that humans are calling for. My story, just in 1 minute, if I may, I was struggling. I felt for Stan. He said, this is all so far away. But actually, on my way here this evening, I stopped for a coffee and to collect my thoughts. And it's got an small Italian coffee, and it's in a bit of a hurry. So I think I'm going to tell the story about you can't take the milk out of the coffee. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell a different story. And so I said, can I have just a little bit of cold milk, please, to go with the coffee? And normally in Italy, there's like a little jug of cold milk on the bar. You can just put a little bit of milk in there. And the woman at the bar said, oh, no, I'll do it for you. And she took some milk out of the fridge and said, well, can I do it? She said, no, I'll do it for you. So we used to have that little jug of milk that you could just, she said, yeah, but with COVID time, we can't do that anymore. We can't put objects around that. That's one of the things that we used to be able to do that we can't do now. And it made me think, I wonder what the things are that we can do today that we won't be able to do in the future because of climate change. We won't be able to do anymore. Let's stop that happening. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to Virginia Fume, to Humans, for your commitment, your passion, your energy. And we're with you, Virginia, as you take a lead in mobilizing support for the introduction of carbon pricing. And thank you for the opportunity you've given Europe Future Fringe. Thank you to our guests, and especially thank you to all of you watching on Facebook tonight. We hope that's been stimulating, and we hope to hear your stories soon. Come join us on the Europe Future Fringe. Tell us your stories too. Thank you very much. Good night. And over to you, Virginia, to wind up the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks, all of you. I don't know if Marco is also connected, but it's been the best closure that I could have imagined for this crazy marathon that we launched. So thanks so much, New Europeans, and all of you guys. Also because this approach that I already had the chance to appreciate in your Tuesday talks, it's really a great way to stop a little bit, slow down, get your brain thinking, and remind to the root of what we do and how we do it. So first of all, thank you very much. And also thanks to all the people that make this day possible. We started with hard facts and numbers and politics, and then we deep dive in the different way throughout the day in the different ways of mobilizing for a tool, carbon pricing, that it's so intelligent but so cold, apparently. And we closed the day with the crazy Italian style that some of you might have seen. And this bedtime story is really the best closure we could have had. I invite everyone who is in this panel and who had been in the panels to keep these connections that we have created through the European Citizen Initiative, as Suzana was saying, but also as putting our brains and heart into creative mode, because this carbon pricing political goal is really achievable, and therefore we just need that bit to make it happen. And I feel today that it's closer. So thanks so much. I get this opportunity to remind to the Humans audience that is following the page that on the 27th of October will be guest of New Europeans for their talk to keep the conversation going on climate change. So I think we were already putting together the pieces. It's just another step. I don't see Marco connected, so I think we can oh, here he is. Maybe yes, maybe not. 3 seconds of we have Marco and his couch. No, so far bad. He's sleeping. Okay. No. Marco Cappato, founder of Humans and first co-promoter of Stopglobalwarming.Eu. So let's close this marathon together.
Virginia, you close the marathon because you are the big organizer. I thank very much everybody from the panel of tonight, because it added a big contribution in terms of commitment and the importance to keep many issues together, not just the emission or carbon tax issue, but also a broader sense of justice, respect, mutual respect, and the respect of the rule of law. We have a big task in front of us, but today was a very special day in which many people from many different backgrounds joined forces in the discussion, which is a first step then to go to action. So thank you very much, Virginia, to having made it possible, and thanks also to all the people that worked technically or with the media or with the press and so on to make this day possible. Thank you very much.
And we have a postponed EU summit waiting for us. So exactly. Let's keep the heart and brains and souls active, because we got something to do. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Ciao.